All right, guys, welcome to the trade recaps. Today, I'm going to break down every single trade that I took in February, my monthly P&L, and how I managed my positions. Now, before we get straight into that, I do want to talk about a few different things that I think helped me a lot this month, but overall in my trading career, and these are things that could be very, very similar to maybe something that you're going through. And I want to talk about a story first before I get into the recap, because this will tie in with the reason I traded the way that I did this month and the way that I was able to actually come out alive in this market, even though it's been super choppy, it's been very hard. You've been hearing every single person talk about how it is extremely hard to navigate the markets. But I'm going to explain to you something that can kind of help you understand a little bit. And it's called trial by fire, or learning from your mistakes, learning from your errors, and actually becoming better over time. Now, this story starts in 2021. So I was a young trader. This was my third year of trading. And in 2021, we had one of the strongest markets ever. This was probably one of the strongest markets we'll ever have. And I was going absolutely crazy. I made a ton of money. I started with about $1,000 and I turned it into over $100,000 in a span of a few months. And I genuinely thought I was going to become a millionaire that same year. And also I genuinely thought I was going to be the best trader in the world because everything was working for me. Every single position I put on was working. I was making a ton of money. Everything was great. Life was amazing. I was super happy. I thought that I discovered something that nobody else was able to discover. But later then came February of 2022. And around the beginning of 2022, we had super high inflation. The market stopped going straight up. The money wasn't really being pumped into the markets anymore like it was in 2021 after QE happened. And the market started to pull back. Now, everything that I learned from the bull run in 2021, I was still applying into my trades because I thought that the market was just going to continue to give me opportunities to trade the upside, and I was just going to take advantage of the dips. Buy the dip, play the upside. And this started to slowly kind of dwindle. This edge slowly started to dwindle a little bit, and I wasn't really making any money. Actually, I was starting to get into drawdown, but I just said, okay, well, it's just a small little pullback. We're going to continue to go higher. And pretty much, to keep it short story, I lost everything that I made from that run up and pretty much went back to where I was before 2021. And that was one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn, going from a few $1,000s to over six figures and coming basically all the way back down because I was not able to adapt to the environment that the market was in. And this is probably one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn. However, this was the best thing that has ever happened to me. And you're probably sitting there wondering, wait, what? How is that even possible? Like, how could that be the best thing that ever happened to you? Because in 2024, we had a very similar market. And in 2025, we had a very similar market to 2021, maybe not as strong, but I was able to make over 2,000% on my portfolio between those 2 years, which is absolutely incredible. Now, most people going into 2025, late 2025, early 2026, will give everything back. And you're probably watching this video and maybe this has happened to you. Maybe you're having a stellar year so far, which is absolutely amazing because it has been super, super tough. But my main focus in these type of environments is actually understanding what environment I'm in first, not trying to make money and attack the markets. Because what I've realized is sometimes you don't have to actually attack the markets, and the job of a trader is not to beat the markets every single day. It is not to beat the markets every single day. It's actually to be able to find when the right environment for your edge is and when you have the greatest edge in the market. If I can make a ton of money from 2021 to 2022, but then keep it whenever the market rolls over, then I am a genius. That is pretty much what trading should look like, because at the end of the day, your strategy is not always going to be fantastic when the market environment shifts, and the market environment isn't always going to be conducive to making money. Sometimes you have to play defense, and I learned this the hard way. But now that I'm able to understand the environment, I'm able to adapt my strategy a little bit, and I'm able to actually understand what is happening in the markets, and that I can't just continue to play the upside. I can't just continue to play breakouts. I'm having some success. And even though it's not the best month I've ever had in my life, I'm still having success, and I'm keeping and preserving my capital. And that's the most important thing, because if I can preserve my capital right now, imagine how much money I can make when we go on an insane trending move, whether it be to the upside, whether it be to the downside. It doesn't matter, because I know I have an edge trading trendy markets. But when my edge starts to disappear a little bit, I don't have that much confidence, when there's not that many opportunities, all I'm going to do is less. Less is more in specific market environments, and sometimes less is more in general, depending on what the market is doing and how your edge is working. So always make sure the number one thing that you're doing is preserving your capital. Learn how to have sit out power. One of the best traders in the world, Jesse Livermore, said, sometimes there is nothing to do, and all you could do is sit. And the money is made in sitting, not doing anything. And you probably heard this quote from many other great investors and great traders. Warren Buffett says the market is basically a tool to bring money from the impatient to the patient. And this is exactly what it is. Trading is about having the patience, it's about having the discipline, and it's about learning how to sit out whenever the environment isn't there and taking advantage of it when it is there. So please learn how to size down when the environment isn't right. Just because you had a losing month, you don't have to go back into the next month and try to make everything back within the first few days. Take every single day as it is, day by day, and focus on trade by trade. Don't take it as a, today I made $10,000, so tomorrow I'm going to have to make $10,000. Every single day is a new day. Focus on the next day. Focus on continuing to use your system and use your process instead of focusing on a money amount. Because to be completely honest with you, I wanted to make $5 million this year. And on the first month that I made over $280,000 in January. And this month, I would have had to make about $300,000 again to be on pace. But just because I had to be on pace to, make that goal, I would have probably blown the account or would have done absolutely something stupid, because it just isn't possible. Sometimes it's not possible to be able to have those type of returns that you aim for, and you have to accept that. And that's why I don't like goals. And honestly, I thought about that again, and I thought about it and I just said, no reason to have a goal. Just trade every single month as a new month and see what ends up happening. So with that being said, let's break down all the trades that I took over the month. I'm going to go over my exact P&L. If you had a rough month or if you had a great month, all that's important is going into the next month fresh. Does not matter. The next month is a new month. Do not bring anything that happened in February going into March. Always think about a clean slate. Focus on the next few trades as if it was just a new trade every single time. Forget about what happened yesterday. Forget about what happened in the year so far. Forget about what happened in the month and just trade. Just focus on your system, focus on your process, and you're going to absolutely make it. All right, guys. So overall, to recap the month, if we go to date range right here and we put this month, you could see it was a $79,000 month with a trade expectancy of $6,000, a profit factor of 3.67, a win percentage of 70%. And this is actually a little bit higher. I think I also took a few break-even trades that were slightly red, but pretty much over 80% win rate. And then average win-loss for the trade was 1.63, meaning my winners were much bigger than my losers, but still trying to get this number a little bit up. If you've been watching my recaps, I'm kind of aiming for an over 2 or at least a 2.5 is my goal. But this is my monthly calendar for the month. Now, you're looking at this and you're probably shocked. What? Green every single day. Now, pretty much I've only took 7 different trades this month. A lot of the other trades that I kind of closed out and that were realizing profits were trades that I took in January, but I pretty much only took 6 new trades and every single one of those was a win. Now, granted, some of them were super small and I'm going to recap a lot of them. This month was pretty much starting super strong. So the first 2 weeks were incredible and then really slow last 2 weeks, but I'll still break it down and I'll still go over each trade that I took, how I was able to, make this return in the beginning of the month and kind of my strategy going into this month. So let's hop on the charts and let's review the first trade. So the first trade that I took was on the ticker MU, and you could see these would be kind of the executions that I took. So this was the only short that I took for the month. I probably should have taken more shorts this month, to be honest, but I didn't really see anything that was too A+ for this. But the setup that I took on MU was on a break of the 8 EMA after being a leading stock. And the reason why I even looked at this stock to begin with is because the market was very weak over this kind of period of time. All right, so this is going to be the NASDAQ, so the tech index. You could see that on this day, Tuesday, February 3rd, the market was incredibly weak and it was breaking this key level right here. So I had this key level marked out, and the moment that I started seeing it break this key spot is when I was super interested in playing the downside and buying puts. And whenever I'm looking to trade the downside, I'm always looking for an important pivot that price needs to break below. And the moment it does, it's probably going to give me a very quick move. And you can see it broke this level with a ton of volume and started to roll over for a pretty nice move. Now, usually I would not short a stock or a sector that is this strong like MU. But the reason why I was even looking at this one is because on this day right here, it had its first distribution day with an RDR sell, and then it failed to kind of bounce and stay up every single time. Usually when it held the 8 EMA, it made new highs. This time it bounced off the 8 but came all the way back down the next day. And when I started seeing it crack that 400, 405 level, I knew that this was probably going to break lower. So what I did from here is I marked out the key level that I was looking at, which was 408. And the moment that we were going to get a break below is where my entry was going to be. So now that I have a daily key level, I always go down to the lower time frames to pretty much get my quote unquote sniper entry. So let's go on a replay on this so I could show you guys exactly what I was watching. All right, so into the open, you could see we have a pretty nasty gap down. Now, I never buy the first 5 minutes because I'm always waiting to see what price does. And in this case, we broke right below that level that I had marked out. You could see right here. And all I was looking for was a retest for my entry. So I was waiting to see if price was able to retest and reject off that spot. And when it started to retest and reject is when I started to buy puts on this one right here. So this was the candle that I started to short on with a high of day stop loss. So my stop loss was at high of day, meaning if it took out that level, that's going to invalidate my trade. And the reason why I do this and I look to take a trade so close to high of day is because the risk to reward is absolutely amazing. So let's say I bought it right there for a short. If that is my kind of risk right here, let's say I bought it right here with this being the risk, and even if I target just the low of day, this is already a 4RR, which is absolutely amazing. But imagine if this thing runs even lower, right? So that was the idea for the short right off the rejection of our level. And you could see it was a little bit slow, but it ended up rolling over the next few kind of hours and especially over the next few minutes. And the moment it started breaking this low of day is really where a lot of the downside happened, right? And what I was looking for was to target big hourly levels on the hourly time frame. So my first target for this trade was right here at 391. I was looking to trim some of my position there. I was looking to trim some at 384, and I was looking to trim some at 376 because on the daily as well, that would be your 21 EMA. So those are my 3 targets. And look at the risk to reward. Just hitting the first target would have been a 6R. And obviously it ended up hitting pretty nicely. And that is where I took some of the profit. So you can see here on the replay, we played out. It pretty much never got back above the previous lows. So this was like the opening print. This was the low right here. Never got back. Right here when it hit, this was my first take profit at this low. So this was my first profit take right here. And then you just let it ride, right? There's no reason to sell your full position, guys, ever. If I have an entry here, why would I be selling my full position right here? I have such a good average. Now all I have to do is move my stop to break even, or you can even move it to the most previous swing high, which would be somewhere around here, because you know if it reclaims this level, it's probably going to go higher. But what I was doing was just waiting for it to hit my targets. So boom, right here hits target. This was another trim, and obviously I'm trimming down as we go. So 25%, 25%. And then obviously my last target was at these lows. This is kind of what I was looking to take most of the profits. And at that point when it hit, eventually it did end up hitting down to that low, is when I took most of the profits on this trade. And this was a 1 week out DTE, which is not something I usually do much. But for puts, I don't usually need that much time. So what I could do is take less time on the puts and be able to catch massive winners like this. All right, and I also want to show you guys the executions here on TradeZealous. You can see the exact kind of areas that I was taking profits and buying. So I ended up getting short right here on this kind of bear flag that was setting up right at the rejection. Stop loss was high of day, so very, very low risk. And then as it was obviously making new lows, trimmed here a few times. And then I got stopped out the next day on the rest of the position. When it came back up to potentially almost stop me out at break even, was when I got stopped out. So even though this thing ended up basically being the next day, like lower than where my entry was, because I took 1 day DTE, this ended up being one that, the premiums kind of got weak. So I ended up closing the rest the day after. All right, so the next one that I took was on the ticker LOW. This is one of the strongest names in the market over the last few weeks, especially when I was obviously looking to trade it. And you can see it's been uptrending off of these lows. It's a home improvement stock, so it's a little bit less likely to sell off with the rest of the market. And whenever I've been looking too long in this market, the only criteria that I've had to get long has to be the stock needs to be going into the moving averages and undercutting a previous day's low or the range lows. So either something like this, or something like this, the exact entry that I took. And these are the only entry methods that I've been taking. The reason why is because entries off the highs have just been getting stuffed over and over and over again. So my criteria was waiting for these undercuts to happen. So I'll explain exactly how this played out and how you could look for the exact same thing. So the first and most important thing when you're looking at these undercuts is you want to be looking for a stock that is already uptrending. It has to be going up, it has to be uptrending, and it has to, be holding very strong. From there, all you want to do is wait for the stock to retest the moving average. You don't want to buy an undercut into just thin air. You want to wait for a moving average tap, because in this type of market, guys, the liquidity has been very, very, very thin, meaning there's only really orders at the highs and there's orders at the lows into moving averages. In between, in like no man's land, there's barely any orders, and that's why a lot of the breakout moves kind of get stuffed. So what I was looking at for LOW was a break of the previous day's low right here. And the moment I started seeing it tap the 8 EMA and get back above was my entry criteria. Now, as always, when you have your daily time frame level, all you want to do is go down to the lower time frames. So right here was pretty much the beginning of the day. This thing absolutely dumped. And then I just was looking for it to get back through the level, right? The moment it got back through my level right here, I bought it. It had some nice volume as well. And this was my entry right here. And the stop loss went to the low of the day as always. And from here, there's nothing that you should be doing. No micromanaging. This thing didn't even end up really running that quickly. It actually took some time. It came all the way back down to retest. This could also be an entry if you're looking at undercuts. So if you see an undercut occur of the previous day's low right into the 8 EMA, you can also buy this level here if you missed the original entry. So just keep that in mind. And then your first target when you're buying these undercuts is always going to be the previous day's high, which would have been right here. So you can see this ends up playing out pretty nicely. It held up the whole day and then pretty much kind of chopped a little bit into the rest of the day. But because it ended up giving me some nice cushion into the end of the day on that close, I ended up holding this position, and then boom, next day gaps up, hits my first target beautifully. And now I'm in a solid position, right? I have a very good average right here. Imagine if I bought the breakout. So if I bought the breakout, which would have been right here, look at how much later I would have gotten in. I would have gone in all the way right here when I could have bought in right here, right on the undercut, right? So it's a way better average. And now you could just hold. Even if it comes down and it fails to break out the first time, you could just hold and let this thing play out. So obviously this thing plays out pretty nicely. It continues to run. And as always, I'm looking at the left side of the chart for targets, guys. And if you notice something about this LOW breakout, is that if you look at the left side of the chart, it's actually at all-time highs, which is awesome. This is exactly what I want to be looking at. I want to be in stocks that are breaking all-time highs. So my entry was right here. My first trim was right there at these highs. And then my second trim was the all-time high. You never want to skip an all-time high trim because the stock will test that all-time high and it will probably reject the first time. But you could see right here it hits the all-time high. I trim it. Right here it gets extended from the 8 EMA. I take another trim. And then unfortunately, this one ends up stopping me out. And this is kind of the moral of the story from here on out for the rest of the month. I have some pretty good traction off the undercut, but then I get stopped out. So this is something that I probably should adapt a little bit more in terms of my strategy and kind of tweaking it a little bit more. And this is always, there's always something to learn in the markets. I could take maybe like smaller time frame DTEs, so like less time on the trades, and maybe let these play out a little bit quicker, maybe make a little bit of a quicker percentage move. And then rather than, holding them for so long, because they do end up kind of coming down and stopping me out break even. So the moment it broke the 8 EMA here, I was out of the full position, kind of stopped me out break even. So again, going on TradeZella, we could see the exact trade and how this ended up playing out. So overall, 52% ROI, not too bad. And if you look at the executions, this was the long, and then you could see this is when I started taking profits right here, and then right here, and then obviously this day when it gapped up, and then from there, it ended up stopping me out, and I took the rest of the position off. All right, next trade that I took was on the ticker DG. This one is a little bit of an unfortunate one, and this is why I was saying, like, this is what I'm basically dealing with the whole month. If you've been dealing with this, you're not alone. It's been so choppy, but same idea on DG as low. It honestly could have played out almost the same way. This was not as big of a winner as I wanted it to be, but all I was looking for was an undercut of the base to buy this thing because I knew it was going to break out, right? Stocks that have been setting up really well over the last few months, if they've been setting up, they're going to break out. They're just not going to do it the first time around, and you're not going to be able to buy them on a breakout. So this was actually pretty much exactly what I expected for it to happen. Like, it broke out and then it came all the way down. And because you have such a good average on the undercut, ideally you don't get stopped out. But I ended up still getting stopped out somehow, which was a little bit unfortunate. But you could see I ended up buying it right here on the previous day's low undercut. It hit the 21 EMA, and then again, you go down to the lower time frames. So I always used to like either the 15-minute or the 5-minute for my entry, but right here was my entry. The moment that it reclaimed, you could see you even have a retest to buy again. So this is if you missed the original undercut and reclaim entry, you have another retest. Sometimes that ends up happening. This was my stop loss, and then obviously right here into the next day, it ends up hitting the previous day's high, which is always your first target for an undercut. I took a trim right here, but unfortunately, look what it ends up doing. It comes all the way back down to my entry and stops me out break even there, which is absolutely unfortunate because this would have been a massive winning position because the next few days, this thing ended up running and hitting my second and third TP, but it happens. This is a part of how the market has been moving, and this is why I said maybe adjusting my strategy a little bit could have been better. So maybe this is something that I'll go into March kind of thinking about. So instead of taking, let's say, like 1 or 2 month out contracts, I'll take maybe 2 to 3 week out options and see if I can get some more follow through on those, because this was still a nice winner. If we go to look at the actual trade, you'll see that this was still about a $3,700 win, but it could have been much bigger, right? So I ended up taking a pretty nice trim on the pop. Actually, oops, this was the breakout right here, and then the pop, and then you could see the next day comes all the way back down, stops me out of break even. Super unfortunate, but it happens in this type of market. All right, guys, next trade is a little bit of more of the same with the undercuts, looking at some of the best stocks in the market and then kind of getting stopped out without any follow through. So I was looking at RTX for a similar play as low. I wanted a very big breakout on this as it was going to break the highs and push out. Of course, I didn't buy the breakout. I bought the undercut. So you could see it came right into the EMA. It kind of respected this level right here, got back through it. So this was the undercut, this was the reclaim. And again, as always, I went down on the lower time frame so we could look at the replay right here to see exactly how this was taken. So the moment that I saw it hit the EMA and it got straight back through this level was when I entered it. Now on your undercut and reclaims, you don't want to wait too long to buy it because the whole point of the undercut and reclaim is you get such good risk to reward. So if you put your stop loss at the low, if you buy it right here, you get such a good risk to reward, even if it's just targeting the previous day's high. So look at the risk to reward if I'm just targeting the previous day's high right here. So if we do a long position, this is going to be our entry, this is going to be our stop, and then this is going to be our target. It's a 3RR just for, setting the trade up like this. So bought it right here as it reclaimed this level. Stop loss went to the low. This hit first TP super quick, about a 35% move on the contracts. Ended up taking first trim. And then obviously with this market, this thing comes all the way back down and unfortunately stops me out. And I don't get another trim, which sucks, right? It is really annoying. But again, it's a part of the process. And, that's something I realized in this market is that you can't get upset. It's annoying. It's choppy. But you have to stick to your guns and you have to continue to, take the base hits when you have them. Just take the base hits and let the market move. So this was the trade here on RTX. If we look at the trade seller, I could show you that a little bit more in depth. I think it was this day right here. Yep, right here was going to be our RTX trade. So yeah, you could see this one ended up being a 7% ROI. I mean, that's pretty bad to be completely honest with you guys, but like what can you do, right? I get my first trim off. You could see I made a decent amount of money on the first trim, about $1,000 and then $800 on that as well. And then it just kind of ends up stopping me out. So right here, again, you can go back and see what ends up playing out on this one. And then you could see I get, stopped out or I take some profits here. And then I end up getting stopped out on this one here, unfortunately. But this was a pretty solid idea. This trade looked pretty good. It just didn't get follow through, and that's part of, trading, especially in this type of environment. All right, next trade that I took, what do you know? Another undercut trade that stopped me out after first TP. But at the end of the day, again, I'm stacking the base hits, and that's the most important thing. So for this trade, it was on the ticker NBIS. Again, one of the strongest stocks in the market. It was up about 41% off the lows. I didn't want to buy it on a breakout here, so all I did was wait for it to come into the moving averages, give me an undercut and reclaim. So right here on this day, it comes into the A, but you could see it never gave an undercut and reclaim. On this day, it comes into the 21 and 50, gives me the undercut, and then boom, that's where I look to buy it. Now for this one is something I definitely want to show you guys, because I ended up missing the undercut and reclaim on the 15 minute, so off the first open. And you could see right here would have been the entry, but I didn't chase. Right? I waited for it to retest, and that's exactly what you should do. The moment that it started to retest right here was exactly where my entry was. Sometimes these stocks will undercut and reclaim and come back down to retest, and you could see this is going to be your entry. So instead of chasing it here, still look to buy it near the undercut and reclaim level, because again, that's the whole idea. It sets up for the risk to reward, right? So if you have the lows as your stop loss, and even if you just target right here back to the high, you have a 2RR. That's absolutely insane. This right here is a 2R. This is why undercut and reclaims are so good, because your stop is so tight, and as long as you just target previous highs, you already have a 3R, which is insane, right? And obviously as the stock pushes, the R is going to get even better. So anyways, I ended up buying it right here. The first day, this one ends up pushing pretty nicely. Next day, obviously gives me a super nice move. I end up taking a trim right here into 103, and then it just kind of dies out. And then the next day, I end up getting stopped out break even, which is a little bit unfortunate. Actually, I ended up getting stopped out break even right here, but the next day it ends up running, which is a little bit unfortunate because I missed, a second TP on this, which I probably would have been able to take right here. But again, and this is why stops are so important, look what happens the next day, right? So next day, it has a massive gap down, and it would have absolutely probably destroyed me on this. Even though it came down to my entry, the contracts probably would have been down on this. So stops are always there for a reason. You want to use your stops. The only reason you shouldn't use your stops is if you don't want to make money in stocks consistently over a long period of time. Always use a stop loss. Always adhere to your stop losses. Sometimes you're going to get stopped out break even after a small little move, and sometimes you're going to have a massive move in the markets. And, the stop is going to protect you from the downside. So always keep that in mind. Now, the last trade that I took was actually a breakout trade. Surprise, surprise. Wow. I haven't taken a breakout trade in pretty much 3 months. This was the only breakout trade that I took this month. And the reason why I took this is because it was a Photronics play. And Photronics have been one of the strongest sectors in the market. This thing was setting up in a massive base. It just had a really good earnings report, and this is what I was looking at, and the IV on the contracts was super, super low, so I was looking to take advantage of that. And I was watching this right on in Wednesday, right in the morning, and when I start to break out, I wanted to take a pretty nice piece and a pretty nice position on this, and it ended up working really well. So I bought it right here, right as it was breaking out. My stop loss was still very tight. This is something I usually wouldn't do in these market conditions. But it ended up working out really, really nicely. I took a nice first trim here into 45, but guess what? It ended up coming all the way back down the next day, literally all the way back down and more, right? So obviously I ended up getting stopped out. And yeah, this market has just been incredibly hard to stay positioned in something. You can buy and it'll have a massive day, and then the next day it comes all the way back down. And I'm sure you guys have experienced pretty much the same thing in this market. And yeah, you just want to stay strong, guys. This market has been incredibly tough. It is very mentally challenging, but do what you need to do in terms of using your system, and know that not every single month is going to be a massive month. Again, I was aiming for, a massive month in February, but what can I do? The market conditions aren't there. I'm not getting any traction on my positions. I'm not going to force it. I'm going to make sure that I, protect my capital, and then we move to the next month. So I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. As always, I'm going to keep them coming. If you have any questions, let me know down below. Like and subscribe to the channel if you want more of these videos. I'm also filming a massive 7-part series for you guys on my entire strategy. This is going to go over everything from how to find stocks to how to trade undercuts, how to enter stocks, everything that you need to know how to manage your positions. So if you're excited about that, leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.